Czechast, a podcast in English about Czech and Moravian society, history, culture and economy.
Hello and welcome to Czechast, the podcast in English about all things Czech. What can art and architecture tell us about the way Czechs see their own history? My guest today is Vlnas, historian of art and professor at Charles University, who has spent much of his career studying the Baroque and the way art shapes our collective memory. We begin on perhaps Prague's most famous landmark, Charles Bridge, a medieval structure transformed over the centuries by its extraordinary collection of Baroque statues.
Charles Bridge is something as a centaur. Centaur is a creature with the body of a horse and half horse, half man, yeah, with a man's head. And he said it's a Gothic body with a Baroque head.
But preserving the past also raises a more difficult question. Can our determination to protect historic cities sometimes make it harder to create something genuinely new?
Whether by trying to conserve, generally the public spaces, we are not creating a kind of environment where creative thinking, modernity is being kind of tied down.
I'm afraid so, yeah.
And what happens when preservation succeeds almost too well? When a beautiful historic town like Český Krumlov in the south of Bohemia becomes an attraction consumed by tourism.
And Český Krumlov,
very popular.
Český Krumlov is, I think, over-popular.
Yeah.
It's a kind of Disneyland.
That's what I mean.
It's something as Rottenburg of the Taube or San Gimignano in Czech relations.
So, how does art shape the way we understand Czech history? Why do monuments matter? And are we still looking at our past through ideas created in the 19th century? That's what I discussed with Vlnas.
Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. Whether you're an English-speaking expat living in Czechia and Slovakia, or a descendant of the Czechs, Moravians and Slovaks who left for a better life in America, Australia, Britain or Canada so long ago that you don't speak the language of the old country, this podcast in English is for you.
I'm a university teacher, teaching at Charles University Prague, early modern history and history of art, mostly Baroque art. And I also was active as a curator and as a museum manager in the National Gallery for long years. Now I'm only at a university and I'm also doing some museum job in the Moravian Museum in Brno.
You are very modest. I know that your career has been very rich and encompassing, I would say, a lot of areas. But if I may, just on a slightly personal note, are you from Prague? Are you Pražák?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a native Prague.
So where did you grow up? Part of Prague.
I think it influenced me very much. I grew up in Malá Strana Lesok Quarter, just under the Prague Castle. So my years of infancy and my early years were full of art and full of Prague.
I love Malá Strana, obviously. I'm not alone. There are a lot of people who love Malá Strana.
I think so, yeah.
Which, more concretely, which part of Malá Strana did you grow up in?
I grew up, and for the first 20 years of my life, we lived in a house of medieval origin in the corner of Karmelitská and Prokopská streets.
Oh, what was it like, I wonder? Because for me, I'm a country boy. I grew up in the Vysočina region, and I remember those visits in Prague already in the 1970s and then later 1980s. Malá Strana was so charming, but it was kind of dilapidated a little bit, if I remember correctly.
Those were years of late communist era, so Malá Strana was not a tourist trap like today. The houses didn't look so charming and so nice, but the infrastructure of stores and of inns was quite better than today. And there was plenty interesting things for small children, where to play, where to hide and seek, and where to discover the parks of Petřín and Kampa, which looked bigger than today because we were small. And yes, and I remember all the creatures and figures and strange people living in Malá Strana on that time, because the flats were very cheap, and living in Malá Strana was sometimes between hygienic and non-hygienic norms. but yeah, it was fine. It was fine.
What sort of feelings have you got today if you come there? Do you often go there these days?
Of course, yeah. I return to my home quarter a lot, yeah. But I don't have a Heimweh. I think it changed so much, and I don't think it's better or worse.
It just changed.
It just changed, and it used to be. And thanks to God, the most of buildings are still standing, and they look better, and they are useful. So this is good, but it's not my homeland anymore.
So, I mean, obviously, you grew up kind of surrounded by these beautiful objects of art, many of them, I would say. When did you start kind of noticing, the objects? Do you remember that? I mean, were you still a boy when you started appreciating art, and when you became interested in what it means, what it tells us about our past?
I think it was during my adolescent years. My father was an architect, and we had a very good library at home. So I grew up encycled with art, and it came during years, I think, without any pressure.
You've spent your career studying not only Czech history, I think, through art. If you were to explain to a layperson who is no expert, what can painting, sculptures, architecture tell us about our past that history books often can't?
It's not only thing or subject of art history, aesthetical art history itself, but we may speak about culture studies, about visual studies, and about a specific kind of thing about art history, which is social history of art. It's not only history of art, it's also history of collecting and history of appreciating art, the history of art history. Yeah? And objects of art can tell very, very much about history and about the past times. Of course, they speak mostly about the history of itself. So the historical painting of 19th century depicting historical episode from 13th century doesn't speak about 13th century, it does speak about 19th century. And it speaks about what was the purpose of such a view on history during this year, during for instance, national movement, during Romanticism, and so on. So it's discovering of meta-history and common memory.
If I may ask you concretely about the Charles Bridge, for example.
Yeah.
Now, when did they put up the statues there?
Turning 17th to 18th century.
18th century. Because we've got this image of Charles Bridge today, as we see it, but it existed for, if I count correctly, most of its existence without any ornaments. Just maybe heretic idea. Wouldn't it be better, just to keep it as it was when it was built?
It's a very good idea. Charles Bridge been always something very, very specific and very rare, because the sculpture gallery on the bridge tower of Old Town, which was decorated by very beautiful Gothic sculptures with a very interesting program with the idea of Renovatio Imperii during Charles IV. And it was decorated from both sides. We know only one side because the second gallery on the other side was destroyed by the Swedish armies in 1648. So it was not only bridge, it was always part of the Via Triumphalis, of the way of the kings, the royal way, the royal mile, where the coronation parades took part and so on. And the idea of sculptures on the bridge was also older than from the Baroque times, because we know from the first era, for the first times, there was a Calvary, there was a crucifixion, Jesus crucified, a Calvary, which is still on its place today. And after then, the first sculpture was a statue of St. John of Nepomuk, and it was on the place where he was, according to legend, killed. He was thrown into the water. So this was the first statue, and after then it became such a kind of fashion or prestigious moments that religious orders, individuals, faculties of Prague University, and such institutions and individuals wanted to found themselves a statue on the bridge.
Donated, yeah?
Donated, yeah. And so the sculptures on Charles Bridge speak about some representation and some ideas of how to memorize and how to make my name or name of my office more immortal. So there are patron saints of the Jesuit order, of individual patrons, of the faculties of the university. But it is not the same as it was in the beginning of the 18th century, because the statues moved there and over for many years. So some statues don't exist or are on some other places. Some of them were destroyed during the floods, and some of them were newly placed on the Charles Bridge during 19th and 20th century. The youngest statue is less than 100 years old. It is a statue of patrons Saints Methodius and Constantine.
And that would be added in the 1930s?
In the 1930s, yeah, it's from Karel Dvořák. Yeah.
You know, I just wonder what it tells us about society. You want to make yourself immortal and just put it on the bridge. I suppose there was no kind of Národní památkový ústav there?
No, but the town hall of the old town of Prague, the magistrates, are responsible for these statues, and they chose from ideas, and there was a quite strong censorship. So yes, there was some kind of official supervision. Yeah.
So when did that start? I mean, the official kind of supervision of the heritage in stone houses. Would that be mid-19th century?
Approximately so, yeah. Because in 19th century, during the nationalist movement, Czech nationalist movement in 19th century, there was an idea to remove the sense of contra-reformation of the Baroque sense, because the Baroque style wasn't very popular in these times, and place on Charles Bridge statues of great personalities of Bohemian past, the Hussites and kings and so on. It never happened, and this idea was also vivid in the year 1918, where the Czechoslovak Republic had been born. Some people wanted to remove the statues from Charles Bridge, but in this time the authorities, the monument authorities, stopped it.
Stopped it. They stepped in.
And they said, oh, no, it's not possible. And yes, we don't believe in Catholic saints, and we don't follow with adorating of them, but those are all historical monuments, and we shall keep it. So, but what is interesting, in the beginning of 20th century, in an artistic journal called, it was a very influential journal of Society of Fine Arts, of artists called Vlnas. There was a great international enquete,
survey, I suppose.
Survey about what to do with Charles Bridge. To keep the statues on or remove them somewhere into museum or so. And celebrated French sculptor Émile-Antoine Bourdelle in the frame of this survey wrote that Charles Bridge is something as a centaur. Centaur is a creature with the body of a horse, and half horse, half man, with a man's head. And he said it's a Gothic body with a Baroque head. I think it was not compliment from his side, but it became a compliment.
It became a compliment. It's just amazing. I mean, it just brings to my mind. Some time ago, I did this program about history of railways in Prague, in Czechia, and in Prague in particular.
Yeah.
And what really caught my attention was the fact that there had been plans to connect the Western railway station, Prague-Smíchov, to the main line by then already between. It was still the now Masarykovo nádraží, the Masaryk station, and Holešovice. And there was a plan that they could actually lead the trails through Malá Strana, through Kampa. And I just wonder what it would have done, to the whole area.
Yeah. That was idea. There was an idea of building main street across Petřín. Yes, that was.
What it would have looked like. Yes. I mean, it would probably.
It looked different.
It would look different. And I just wonder. I mean, Prague didn't lose Malá Strana as it looks now, but I wonder, are there some parts of Prague that completely disappeared because of the kind of industrial revolution, and obviously what comes to my mind is Josefov, obviously.
The fifth quarter, so-called the fifth quarter, Jewish ghetto, Finnish ghetto. Yes, some great parts of especially new town of Prague, and also old town with this fifth quarter, and also the parts of Malá Strana. It's also touched by this assassination. This assassination.
That's what we call it in Czech.
Yes, we call it in Czech. It was a process of modernization of Prague, and I think it was very important. It was necessary because
they had to do something.
They had to do something with terrible sanitary conditions and hygienical conditions in central Prague. And of course, there were some zones, some districts, and sometimes there was destroyed anything what was of monumental or historical quality. Yes, that's right.
But it wasn't on the scale, for example, like in Paris under Baron Osman,
It was not Osmanization.
It was not Osmanization. And I mean, just out of curiosity, I actually had the kind of privilege to spend about 3 years in Paris in the 1990s, and I loved that city.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, was there a big discussion? I mean, was there some opposition, perhaps?
There was, but it was not so big because it was a thing of national pride, and they wanted to create Paris as a modern, new European town.
Metropolis,
Metropolis. The same thing was in the second half of 19th century in Florence, in Firenze. Florence, which is for us still such a historical town. It was completely modernized in the second half of 19th century, because it was for 10 years it was a capital of Italian kingdom before the Rome had been conquered by Garibaldi, and it had been turned into a modern small Paris with great boulevards, with viale, circular communications, and so on, with embankments, Lungarne. It also changed very much. And in Prague, this modernization, which was, of course, in our term, very cruel, very rude, but it also led to the birth of modern monumental care and the thinking of monuments as in context. That the value of the quality of the age, the quality of place is not a local thing or only one building, but it's complex. It's also a context of countryside. It's a context of nature and building. It's context of what we see as a silhouette of the town and so on.
Let me just mention that we recently spoke about the Radecký monument in Malá Strana, Malostranské náměstí, which, just to explain to the listeners, even though you can find it on the web pages of Radio Prague International, I mean the article, and listen to the story that I did. The monument was erected in the basically half of the 19th century. Yeah. And then it was taken down after 1918, when Czechoslovakia was founded, as a kind of symbol of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, of which the Czechoslovak Republic wanted to be kind of cleared off.
Yeah.
And now, but fortunately, they didn't destroy the monument, because it's a beautiful bronze statue or group. And now it will return. And we spoke about that in Czech. In English, if you can explain, what does that story tell us, about us?
The story of monuments, of installating of monuments, of removing of monuments is very interesting, and it has much to do with social memory, with historical memory, with institutional memory, with lieux de mémoire, the places of memory, to quote the famous French historian Pierre Nora, because the places of memory shouldn't be only a local. So I think it's a story about how to make our history better. We always live in the land which the past of which is full of changes, and because we cannot do very much with our future, we always make our history better, our past better. So the installating of monuments, of new monuments, or old new monuments, as the Radecký monument is speaks about that we, after more than 100 years, we don't have such a critical relationship with Austro-Hungarian monarchy, and I hope we can look face to face our history without some Minderwertigkeit complex. And of course, Radetzky was very clever and very great military leader, and he belongs to the history of this land and this town. So I think that return of his monument is okay.
I think we've already indicated that, but I did find some of your recent writings for the Reflex magazine, where you've drawn kind of connections between historical art and today's political debates. I just wonder, why do those old kind of images or the old statues, monuments, speak so kind of powerfully to the present? And can you give another example? I mean, rather than Radetzky, perhaps, something that really speaks to us today.
I think that the personalities from monuments, which are still part of present history. So the personalities connected with let us say, communist era, Nazi era, Second World War, and so on, are still very disputed and are still, we fear of some of them. And there is not possible to recreate, for instance, monuments to people like Stalin and Gottwald and so on. Yeah, it's impossible. But the older personalities, as Radetzky is part of very, very far history. 19th century is. For my children is something like Middle Ages. So I think these are not so hot. As you mentioned, my writing for the Reflex journal, it was a challenge. But I like it now to write every month a short essay. It's not. It's very non-scholar writing, not scientific writing. It's something much more different for me. But it's interesting to find some connecting points between old pictures and our our current situation. And our current situation is full of historical points. So,
can you give me an example?
I think that, for instance, I wrote about the famous cartoon called also the first meme in the history of art, history of political art, history of picture journalism, visual journalism, and it was a famous creature of French King Louis Philippe as a peer, Le Roi Poire, and it was a great joke. Which issued into a political process, and it's a very, very, very fine story, which has many common points with, for instance, today discussions about how is it possible to criticize the political personalities, and there are some voices who periodically declare that is necessary to make a law to protect some offices, for instance, the President of the Republic or judges from political criticism, against the criticizing from the public side and so on. So I think it's still alive. Yeah.
Obviously, across not just Europe, but mainly in the United States,
Yeah.
in Britain, a lot of monuments were taken down for, I would say, for reasons that would be difficult to understand to the people who lived in those times when the monuments were erected. What do you think about it? This is just, is it same old story? It's happened before, I suppose, or is there something new about this trend?
I don't think it's new. I think it's an iconoclasm, and iconoclasm is nearly as old as the art is. Yeah, damnatio memoriae called it old Romans, and before them in Egypt there were erased the names and visual symbols of some people who were unpopular. And during the history, I think every great social movement, Hussites, Catars, in iconoclasts in Byzantine Empire, Reformation, Calvinists, and so on, they destroyed visual symbols of their enemies. Yeah, and I think it's still the old and still living, trusting or the faith of the importance and of the power of icons, the power of visual symbols. Yeah? The men or the people who remove some monument do trust and they fear of this power and do trust in power of the monument as well as the people who build this monument do.
That's what they share, paradoxically.
Yes, yes. Those things share the both sides. In fact, I think that 90% of people don't see the monuments. For mostly of us, the monuments who stay on their places 100, 200 years are the part of visual smoke. It's we don't see it, in fact, and we shall see it in the moment when it will be over. When there will be empty place.
They are not there anymore.
Place. Yeah. So the only creatures that are interesting in monuments are birds, in fact, the pigeons.
Because they can use them as
yes.
The
bronze monuments are very, very good for them.
Let me ask you this. This is not so much about monuments, but about places, I suppose. I recently visited the United States, and among other places, I was in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Where the building stood, where Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk met representatives of Czech Americans, Slovak Americans, and they signed a document which is called Pittsburghská dohoda, Pittsburgh Agreement, I suppose. Unfortunately, the building was demolished, and now there's a kind of playground, there's a sports ground, but it's open for public. And they have this sign, which says, here was the building, where this happened. And I'm totally neutral. I was just wondering, what's the meaning of this? Because the building is not there. This is just the place. The place has changed completely. So I'm just reminded that something like that existed, and it took place here. And I don't know. It left me kind of wondering whether I'm glad that I visited the place, whether I've learned something. or not? What do you think about that?
Those are very examples of such a praxis. In the 19th century, for instance, society of artists, culture society called Umělecká beseda, Artists League or Artists Discussion Club, but it was organization, took commemorative plaques on the houses, and on the places where the houses stood were some great or more or less great Czech great people were born. Yeah? The native houses, the cult of native houses is very, very popular in our land, and I think not only in our land. Yeah, it's especially in the small towns and villages. Village where some great personality had been born. It's because of the people need to be in physical contact with history. In the civic sphere, we don't adorate the relics, the bones of our great people, but we need to be in contact with the history in its physical way, in its physical appearance. And there's a fact that history doesn't take part only in the time, in the period of time, but also it takes place in some local places. There are playgrounds of history, and this is why not to have a commemorative plaque on the Pittsburgh Agreement on the sports ground. Yeah, I think it's not bad. Why not?
Why not? You're right. Back to Baroque, because I think you devoted a lot of time to study of Baroque. And as we already mentioned, I mean, Czechs, especially during the 19th century, during the kind of rise of nationalism, you could call it, started seeing the Baroque period as a doba temna, dark period, when in fact there's so much was created in the Czech lands, and I mean Czech lands, I mean Moravia as well. Do you think the Czechs, obviously we now, I don't know whether adore, but we like to have Baroque statues around us and Baroque architecture. When did the Czech kind of attitude, I know it's a broad generalization, but when did this kind of antagonism or this kind of negative viewing of Baroque change, or has it changed?
I think this was not one event, and it was a growing process. The first beginnings of this changing of attitude is in the beginning of 20th century, the era of symbolism and decadence and so on. Because the leading intellectuals of this time found some affinity between their own ideals and between the sensitivity of their era with Baroque sensitivity. And for the first time, they said, okay, maybe it was a dark era, but they gave us the great art which doesn't exist in reformated parts of Northern Europe. And this great art is connected with the Roman Catholic Church and Roman Catholic way of looking on the world. The Roman ideas, the ideas of which came from Italy, which was a culture center of the continent. So it was the first time. After then, the turning point was in 30s of the 20th century. There was the first great exhibition of Baroque art called Prague Baroque. It was in the year 1938. And in the year 1938, when Czechoslovakia was in very critical state, and it has been oppressed by Nazi Germany. So from all sides. So in this era of political crisis, Czech culture, searched for some roots of national culture and national ideas, and they found Baroque as the great era of Czech spirit, let us say. Yeah, they saw that there was also a great literature, great poetry during the Baroque era in Czech language. So this was a very, very important, and some leading historians, as Josef Pekař and his disciple Zdeněk Kalista, wrote very interesting and, let us say, very rehabilitating texts about Baroque. And after then, during the communist era, Baroque was officially the dark time, the time of foreign nobility and imperialistic Catholic Church and Jesuit missionaries and so on. But the scholar thinking and research of Baroque culture was, let us say, standard and very, very great and interesting books were edited during this era. So I think it changed gradually, and I hope that today nobody trusts in the dark era. Yes, we have dark eras in history, but these are in our heads only. Yeah.
Obviously, you're a professor. You teach at university. Do you notice that young people and their perception of the past has changed in the past 30 years?
Yes, I think so. I think that they look on the history on a much broader concept than our generation did. They are interesting mostly in connections between past and present, and they have much more opportunities to travel. Their language skills are better generally. So they often compare the national history or only Czech history with some European broader context, and I find it very, very interesting. I find it good. Sometimes they are more broader than deeper, but it happens. Yeah, to young people it happens.
You know, the reason why I ask, I know it's a very broad generalization. Nevertheless, we live in this time of social media and everything. And,
oh yeah.
And as we say in Czech, nářek je všeobecný, you know, where is the world coming? But when I look at my children who are over 20 and my daughter is still a teenager and their friends, I mean, it kind of fills me with hope, frankly. But I still understand that we are talking about mostly people who will go and study at university, at colleges, so that's not a broader generalization. That's not a broader kind of sample of the society.
Yeah.
But it's hopeful, even what you say.
But they don't have some prejudices as we did. Yeah, they are open-minded, and this is very nice.
So the prejudices, like against Baroque, for example, that you grew up with?
Against Baroque and against some branches of social history of I don't know, of lefties, political movements, and so on. It's normal subject of the research, and that's fine.
Right. Before I get to the last question, let me ask you about someone who grew up in Malá Strana like you, Giovanni Santini Eichel, Jan Blažej Santini Eichel, his full name in Czech. I grew up literally in the shadow of
Johann Baptist, because
Johann Baptist.
His first language was German.
I'm sorry about that, but yeah. I grew up in Žďár nad Sázavou. So I literally, we went to play in the church, or around it, when it was still kind of surrounded with forests. I'm talking about the pilgrimage church of Saint John of Nepomuk on the, what we call somewhat pompously Green Mountain, even though it's a kind of hillock. In a way, you mentioned, Charles Bridge being this mixture of Middle Ages and Baroque. Well, what he did, on purpose, was to mix Baroque and Gothic as well. Isn't that so?
Yes and no. His personal style is on popular way known as Baroquní gotika, the Baroque Gothic. In fact, it is Gothicizing Baroque.
Gothicizing Baroque.
It's a Gothicizing Baroque, and it's his very individual style. What is interesting to the English art historians, they find anything common between Santini's way of recreating Gothic elements and the English architecture of 18th century. The first article on Santini in English is called Bohemian Hawksmoor, after famous English architect Sir Hawksmoor. This could happen, and he found individual style of Baroque building, mostly influenced by Borromini, by Guarini, but also by French architects of that time. But it's individual, it's very original, and he used some Gothic elements, but not in Gothic way. He used them as purely effective and purely decorative elements, as pillars and so on. So his return to Gothic is some kind of homage, some kind of reminiscence of the golden era of 14th century Bohemian Gothic. And I think this was the point which was very interesting for the abbots and for the foundators, for the clients of
for his clients,
for his clients, because the basilic in Žďár nad Sázavou downstairs,
down under the hill,
is also very original.
Oh yeah,
very original building by Santini, but it was Gothic and it was remodeling by Santini. In this
but
way.
My question basically was,
yes.
I did a program around it a little bit, whether Santini could build something today, or person of the same kind of courage, creative courage, in today's society, in the 21st century, whether by trying to conserve, generally the public spaces, we are not creating a kind of environment where creative thinking, modernity is being kind of tied down.
I'm afraid so. Yeah. We don't have Santini today.
We don't have Santini, and basically the basic idea is,
And we have more restrictions for the public space. Some people from developers world say, "Oh yeah, Santini had no the laws and the restrictive.
There was no stavební úřad,
there was no památkový úřad, there was not a monumental bureaucracy. Abbott gave him money and
that was it.
And that was it. Yeah, that was it. But it was not so. There was very some restrictive rules within the cities and so on. Mm-hmm. So it was not pure anarchy, let us say. But yeah, we need genius.
Let me just mention for the listeners, I will put some photographs on the website of Radio Prague International, so you can look at it, you know. And finally, I wanted to ask you, I know this is probably a difficult question to answer, if impossible, but if someone really wanted to understand Czech history through art, and had, let's say, 1 week, and was not limited only to Prague, mm-hmm. where would you send him or her? In Prague.
In Prague, mm-hmm. to the National Theatre.
And why is that?
In Prague, because the visual form, the statues and pictures and paintings in the National Theatre, it's all about Czech historical mythology. Mm-hmm. And it's the great place where to see and where to understand what ideas about their ideal past Czechs created for themselves in 19th century. And in fact, we still look at history through the prism, through the eyes of 19th century, of nationalism of 19th century. It's still so. And the historiography is still telling the tales of the members of our tribe in the marketplace in the evening. So it's nothing else, and I think this place should be the starting point of all the rethinking of Czech history.
You know, I know I said last question and finally, but let me just ask you. A few years back, I was working on another program about Český Krumlov. Mm-hmm. And I was just wondering, you know, this was already after COVID, I think. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't so crowded. But mm-hmm. so many people come there. They just see Český Krumlov, or they take a trip from Prague to Český Krumlov. I'm talking about visitors from other countries.
Yeah.
For example, Český Krumlov, does it say much about Czech history, really?
And Český Krumlov,
very popular.
Český Krumlov is, I think, over popular. Yeah. It's a kind of Disneyland.
That's what I mean.
It's something as Rothenburg of the Taube, or San Gimignano in Czech relations. I think Český Krumlov speaks about the internalization of Czech history in generally. It's a Renaissance city with some Gothic origins, but in fact it's not a Gothic city at all, because it wasn't developed organically, and it wasn't founded as a city, because it was originally a mining city. Yeah, it's a Kutná Hora. This is why it is very chaotic, which is picturesque, of course. Yeah, it's very very nice, and in fact, it's a great story of the Bohemian Renaissance and of the opening of the windows in 16th century from this peripheral used country encircled by the mountains, opening windows and opening minds toward Europe. The Italian influence, Renaissance artists came to this small town, which became a local metropolis in that time during the nobles of Rosenberg family and the other families they came after them.
But back to the National Theatre that you mentioned. I have a similar feeling when I look at for me personally, as a layperson, when I look at National Theatre and National Museum, actually.
Yes.
It's quite on the similar level.
Quite on similar level, but there is a small difference. The whole National Theatre is built on the idea of manuscripts, rukopis Královédvorský, Zelenohorský, so completely romantic idea of national past, and the decorative parts of National Museum are a little bit later with same artists, but the pictures changed a little bit because the idea of manuscripts was not still alive.
We should explain that the manuscripts were falsified.
Very
and they kind of were intended to promote this kind of idea of Czech greatness and stuff like that, but they were falsified.
Yes.
What does... I'm just wondering, I'm sorry that we started talking about the manuscripts.
Yes, please.
Are there other cases like that in other countries? I'm talking about romantic time of 19th century.
Yes, of course.
Many of them.
I think in England and in Great Britain is the Celtic, great Celtic wave. Some Ossians sing songs and Ossians epic. In Russia, they have their medieval national epic Slovo o pluku Igorově.
So there's nothing special about it, about Czechs.
No. It's nothing specifically Czech. Yeah.
And that you mentioned the Celts and the Celtic thing. I remember that in the 1990s, it seemed to me that there's kind of this trend. Everything Celtic was welcome. There were Celtic festivals, even in Žďár nad Sázavou, my hometown. Celtic music. Near na Sabrky, we have Keltské hradiště, which is kind of recreation of very idealized, I have to say, of what the Celts were like. And why do you think people have this kind of tendencies in some periods of time to go back to the Celts, then, because that wasn't present in the 19th century, of course. That was about Slavic culture.
No, I think it was a reaction on this Slavic dominancy. Yeah, because still today, some people, and it's a great amount of people, have tendency to say, "Oh no, we are not of Slavic origins. We are all Celts or Germans or something." It's also a kind of self-identification with something different, with something better, because the Celts are better than Slavonic nations. So we don't have anything common with, I don't know, Russians and so on. So it's this idea of self-confidence, of creating of some self-identification, but I think it's not dangerous.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your invitation.
And I hope to see you soon again.
I hope so, and I'm sorry for my English, which I did not practice for a long time, so back to origins. But my soul is nice.
Good.
Thank you very much.
That was Vlnas, historian of art and professor at Charles University in Prague, talking about art, architecture, and the ways they shape our understanding of Czech history. Thanks for listening to Czechast. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the podcast, and if you know someone who might enjoy it too, please share it or recommend Czechast to a friend. It really helps us to reach new listeners. I'm Vít Pohanka. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay curious, and as we say in Czech, naslyšenou.
Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. Whether you're an English-speaking expat living in Czechia and Slovakia, or a descendant of the Czechs, Moravians and Slovaks who left for a better life in America, Australia, Britain or Canada so long ago that you don't speak the language of the old country, this podcast in English is for you.